I'm here with Anne or Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, good afternoon, morning, evening.
Yes, I say that on my show. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night. But I don't like the good night because it sounds like a goodbye, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know. I'll not do that one.
Yeah, but I just did to the hello bot. Right, so we are looking at a series around the five senses that we would be classically taught at school. So we're working through that. We've done audio processing, what we might describe as hearing, although it's more to it than that. So we're looking today at seeing, although I'm guessing probably like hearing, there's a bit more than just one word. If you're thinking, who's Anne Laure Jackson? Well, she is a specialist sensory occupational therapist. So she has a specialty in the sensory health, something that we might classically think of as ADHD or autism, which is sort of only one teeny tiny element of what you're doing every day. Who have you seen in the last 7 days? I mean, where have you been helping?
Oh my word. Mainly focusing just at the moment in our schools. So goodness me, we've got everything from fetal alcohol, Down syndrome, as far as like syndromes are concerned, but also just children who are active and busy and they can't sit still and they can't focus, or they're just but have no specific diagnosis. They're just not doing as well as they could do. You know, that the handwriting's not quite so right. But also those I am dealing with those who are kicking and screaming, and it's about how we understand what is going on, because that they are communicating something. So it's always trying to get to the root of what is going on as to why they have to behave the way that they do in order, you know, they're showing us something. What is it that they are communicating to us? Because all behavior is communication, and my job is to untangle the sensory aspects of it all. And then we deal with that first, and then we can look at behavior management programs and everything else. Because if a child isn't regulated, if they're completely distressed and distraught, you can't teach on top of that. You can't work constructively really on anything. So a lot of my work this week has been dealing with those who are more on the distressed and not regulated end of the spectrum. That's where my main focus has been this time.
Which is an awful lot of people because if you can't teach that one child, they're not going to learn. But the teacher or the learning system or whoever is in the room, now they can't teach everybody else as well. And that one problem's not quite the right word, but that one specific issue then starts to magnify like ripples on a lake, and all of a sudden it isn't just one person who's not working or learning, it's 30 children, and then they get home and they're frustrated and it affects the parents and on and on and on.
Yeah, yeah. And I had some really lovely feedback from one of the parents today who was just delighted that the school has taken this on as well. In fact, two parents. What one's in the UK, one's here locally. But saying the difference that it makes when the schools are able to adapt. There was one school that they moved their child because the school said, look, there was nothing they could do. It was the child's issue, and they just weren't set up to cope with the child. Went to a different school who had a different attitude, and they said, well, tell us what we need to do. And she said, it's like chalk and cheese. The difference is amazing. And the way they're coming home from school, they have a calm, the boy's just really happy. And it's like, why did it need to change? You know, he's lost everything else. He's lost a friendship group and lost other things that he was familiar with. But actually, at least he's happier because actually the school has heard and the school have adapted, and it doesn't take a lot to do that. And the other parent was saying just what a difference it is when actually the schools that drive this, because when you're an independent practitioner, there are many parents that come to me because they're not getting help from anywhere else. And then I say, look, you can do this, and I'll help you write to the schools, and I'll help you write to clubs or organizations, or if they're older, we can communicate with your workplace. And although that is great, the difference that they say it makes if the school or the workplace is initiating it, then they are like so receptive because they're the ones that are wanting it to work. It's being driven from the school, it's being driven from the workplace, and not just the individuals or the parents going, look, this is what we have. So that is effective, but I'm trying to see how we can actually help and get access into the schools so they can drive it, so that it's not quite so much a resistance. The parents still need to break down a little bit of resistance as to whether this stuff is going to make any difference or not. It's only once they've tried it once that they realize, oh yes, it is worth giving it a go. But schools are so busy, people are so busy that you really have to be in a tough spot in order for them to really pay attention and to
Mm.
take something new on, because at the moment this is relatively new still.
And I guess it's that same issue that we've raised many times. We like to put people in a little box, and if everyone goes neatly in a box like a whole bunch of cubes, all of a sudden the box is nice and full and neat. But none of us are cubes, and none of us fit in cube boxes. So actually, it's about, okay, what shape are we, and how do we best get on, rather than bashing into each other. And we're not going to fit, perfectly next to each other. Never going to happen. 5 minutes at a time, perhaps. But how do we then all these different shapes of people? Which is why I really like things like Monsters Inc., where you got all these different monsters, different aliens, and they've all got these different cars and different doors and different chairs and different jobs, because actually it's about taking the wider society. Hey, how can we actually get on with one another?
Yeah, because there's a massive drive over here, and this week exactly that was my thought. There's a big drive for everybody to get diagnosed with ADHD. They're bringing more people over to help with the assessment process. And I thought, oh, if we could only just develop a society that understands, we would just break down, we just accept people for who they are. Yes, there is help needed, but it's also the fact that why do you need a diagnosis in order to feel okay? Which is what some people are. I'm not knocking it. If you need a diagnosis, I totally understand it, and it totally makes an awful lot of sense, and it gives you resources and support that you wouldn't ordinarily get. So I'm not knocking the diagnostic process. I just think somehow underneath, it would be great that we just get to a society that we understand that people are different. We are so busy trying to make so many people so-called normal, whatever that is, that we miss the nuances and the peculiarities and that compassion to accept that people are different. And let's learn how to relate to every single person the way that they like to be related to.
Hmm.
And let's communicate them in a way that is relevant and possible for them to accept that communication in. So then it doesn't matter about diagnoses. Okay, it's quite an idealistic thought, but there's an awful lot we could do just to raise that awareness. Like little children, they're remarkable at accepting other people's differences. They don't like bad behavior. Because they say, well, he's naughty, or all of that kind of stuff. But we can reframe things pretty quickly, and change things pretty quickly. And it's just like, yeah, if they are being naughty, how can we help them so that they are not, if that's what they are looking like, which of course, in my world, most of them would have other underlying issues that are causing that it's not. Yeah, there's normally more going on. Most of us want to be liked, and most of us want to do the right thing, even though we can't
Hmm.
technically always.
Right. Let's move on to sense number two. So we've looked at hearing as we would think of it, auditory processing, which is probably closer to it. But this week we're going to look at seeing, at sight, the visual stuff, what we can see. So just break down really simply for us what's going on when we see something, what's actually happening for me to look at my monitor. I've got a little dragon on one side, I got a fork, I've got a light, and I've got you in the middle. Why can I see those things, and where does it go wrong?
Yeah. So the actual visual side of it, I will leave that for ophthalmologists and visual specialists of the actual the sensory aspects of the actual eye itself, apart from the fact, because I deal with the processing on the other sides of it. But we've got central vision, and then we've got peripheral vision. We've got rods and cones that pick up basic details and colors and those kind of things. That's all of the physical nature of the eye, which I will leave to the other folk. But yeah, so the information comes into the eye, and then it gets flipped over and converted into those electrical currents again that gets sent to the aspects, the back of the brain, your visual cortex, to be processed and for the brain to make sense of it. So it's the making sense of it is mainly where I get involved, apart from the fact that we have 6 muscles around each eye that actually control the direction of the eye. And because I deal with muscle work, then that is something that we would work on to make sure that the eyes are pointing in the same direction and are pointing where you want it to go. So for people who are trying to read, sometimes if those eye muscles aren't smooth, They might be a bit jerky. It's very easy to lose your place, and you just don't want to read because it's not satisfying because your eyes are just going in different places. Copying from a screen or a blackboard, whiteboard, things that are up and you have to then write and then you move your head up and down. All of that takes eye muscles. And if your muscles aren't well integrated, it's very hard to be really specific and focused. So there's the eye muscle work around the eye, and that also, yeah, there's the eye muscle work around the eye, and then we go the actual processing on the inside, where we've got another about 7-ish categories of what our eyes actually perceive. So it's not what they see. That's normal physical information where people might be blind, might have a visual impairment, but it's the actual processing on the inside. Which would you like me to go into those 7 or 8 different categories of?
I think it's worth doing. If we're going to do this, let's go a little bit deeper.
Okay, I might need my glasses on this to read if I can remember all of what they are. Let me just go for it. Okay, so we've got visual discrimination, visual memory, sequential memory, spatial relations, form constancy, and visual closure. Oh, did I get them all? Perhaps not. Let me have a look and just see. In sequential memory. Yeah, I'm not sure we did have that. So if I take it in turns, so like, yeah, visual memory, that's the things that's quite a nice and quite an easy one. So you see the numbers of a telephone number, or you see you need to go to door number 17. You know, you go knock on somebody's door and you can see it's number 17. So you've remembered it, and it's a number that you've seen it on a piece of paper or you've seen it on a text. Go here and you can go. Sequential visual memory is when you have like a full telephone number. So you see somebody's telephone number, or you have to copy and paste a code in your phone, your, one code password thing, and that's visual memory. So for some people, that's a very hard thing to do. Dyslexia is something slightly different again, but it all connects with it. It's that visual memory of being able to see something and remember the order. So if you're phoning Jersey, it would be 01534. But if you've got your visual memory not working so well, you might do 05354 and you're completely lost. You're not going to get there. So those 2 aspects of visual memory are really important. We then have something like visual closure. So it means that your eyes can close things off. So if you have, for example, I've got a cup here, my lovely Serenity cup. If I put it behind the screen and it cuts half of it off, I can still tell that it's a cup because my eyes have completed what it thinks, because it has a visual memory of an item and therefore can make sense of it and will close in. That's why it's called visual closure, and will close in the other bit of it. And that's a problem if people can't close things off. If they can't actually see it, they don't know it's there. Spatial relations are how things relate to other things in the environment. Visual discrimination is about, can you tell the difference between a B and a D? By seeing it, you might be able to hear the difference, but can you actually physically perceive that it's the right way up, and a P and a B and a D, all the upside and a Q, all of those can get flipped up into different angles and orientations. And what else was there? Oh yeah, form constancy. Form constancy, that basically that like an orange is an orange, regardless of how big it is, or it might become a clementine, but it's that same family, that it is an orange, even though it looks different. Or a glass. You've got different shapes and you've got different sizes, but it's still a glass because you know that it's made of glass. So that's the kind of form constancy, the way that we can perceive things and then categorize things. So visual processing works really closely with our cognitive function, with our thinking abilities, but you've got to be able to perceive those differences first. You've got to be able to see it, get it in through your eyes, take it to your brain, and the brain makes sense of all of that, sorts it through, categorizes it, puts labels on it, and that's where it connects with our thinking brain as well.
So if you had like a square table, it's a table. If you stick a back on it, now it's a chair. It's that sort of understanding of, well, if it's got a back, it can't be a table because tables don't have backs. unless someone's being really weirdly autistic. But you've got you've got a flat square thing. That's a chair. Now you've got a back. Okay, that's moving into the chair from the table.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's really fascinating. And then you get people with like subtle differences, and you think, oh yeah, yeah, no, that they can't actually tell that this is the same as this, or they get really confused. As you say, if there was somebody who's being really artistic, they could get quite angry and quite annoyed if you call that a chair, but no, it's a table. It's like, that's not a nice place for them. But it is. Yeah, it is remarkable the number of things you're trying. Oh, figure ground. That's of course that's the other one. Figure ground. You're trying to find something in the background. So at the moment, I'm on screen, and you can probably see my face in the midst in the background of windows and lamps, and same with you. I can see bookcases and all things in the background, but I can still focus on you. If you're trying to find a pair of socks in a drawer, you've got all of these socks, you've got all of these colors, you've got all of these patterns, or maybe you don't. And it's like, where is the pair of socks that I want? And they can't find it. You're trying to find a pen in a pencil case. You're trying to find a certain coin in a number of coins. And it's like, it's just too cluttering. And that's why we have people who really need to live quite minimalist, so that it's much easier to find the things that they need to, because their figure ground processing, which is the last part of visual processing, isn't functioning as well, and it's all very easy to look like a blur, and they can't find things in the background.
I would never have gone to minimalistic homes as an issue potentially of sensory processing of the eye.
Or I really want to do a series, it might like on sensory healthy homes, as to how and why. And yeah, same with like marriages. Goodness me, we've had another marriage just struggling at the minute, and it's just like we need to understand these sensory processing issues, how it's affecting your relationships, because of what you're expecting of the other person that they can't do because they literally cannot. It's not that they are not wanting to, it's that they cannot change what they are doing. But yeah, homes, that's a real passion for me, because I love houses and adaptations and things anyway. So that's what one of my sons says. He says, Mum, you should do something on sensory healthy homes. So
So when we see a house, the sort of the nightmarish house, if you like, of there's just stuff everywhere, there's clutter, they've made little roots with newspapers stacked to the ceilings and never get rid of anything. If you've got issues, like you said, and you want a minimalistic home, that would be your worst nightmare, probably. But is that an opposite end? Is that like underreactive visual thing? Or is
there
not?
is There is a potential, absolutely. There is a potential. So actually, lots of color. The people who have really, really colorful houses, that it could be clutter, and it could be their simple way of increasing the amount of visual input that makes them feel that they feel calmer if there isn't actually a lot of clutter. There is the emotional aspect of hoarding. That's a separate thing. But if it was a pure sensory thing, yeah, absolutely, it could be for those who are visually underreactive, under-responsive, and that they need more stuff in the environment in order to get that sense of where they are, how they are, that enjoyment factor. Because if they were in a room that was completely bland or minimalistic, that would be quite unnerving potentially, unless they had other little things that intricate pictures or other things that they could actually put their eyes on to focus, or differently they would no they wouldn't, they'd just color it differently. They'd have to bring color in. They wouldn't be able to, or texture or other things to feed their eyes, because they wouldn't be comfortable. It'd be too stark.
I have been in a house where there was like a bright red wall or a bright purple wall or something like that. And I used to walk in and think, oh, it's a bit much. Could you just, bit of whitewash, just tone it down just a little bit. It'd be better to sit here. But of course, I'm guessing now, well, they're potentially, they've got a sensory issue of being underreactive in this visual context. So all of a
Mm.
sudden, it's not, that's just weird. Actually, it is there weird, I suppose, in a sense, if we're talking about normals, but actually, it makes sense to them because it helps them to process because they're under. So it's sort of, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, we're just so easy to judge, for so many things. I think it is good that we recognize that actually, for me, if I was living here, I would have to change it. And that's where we sometimes get split. Some people get caught in thinking, oh, I have to keep it like that because that's what society says I need to do. And they and it's just like, no, actually acknowledge who you are. and that if you need it toned down a bit or if you need it upped a bit, go and do it. And be prepared to. I was thinking during the week, why do people feel judged? And I do wonder is how much do we actually judge in the first place? Therefore, if we have had those thoughts, are we thinking that other people have those thoughts
Mm.
about us? And therefore, if we can change how judgmental negatively, I think there's a positive judgmental, but that how if we are being negatively or have been in the past negatively judgmental, if we can change how we are, then we have the ability to live with doing what we know to be right and free from perceiving other people's judgments about what we're doing and how we're doing it.
It makes me think of it's the idea of making a judgment as opposed to being judgmental is how I would word it. It's good to make judgments about things. You make a judgment. Can I cross this road safely before that car gets to where I am? We make a judgment. And as you get older and you get taller, because you've got now a better physical perspective, you make a better judgment just because you're taller. No other reason. And then obviously, speed and all the rest of it. But it makes me think about there's a really big push. Everyone needs a minimalistic home. We've got to have this. We've got to have that, which now I'm questioning were the people that drive that, so were the people that were driving that, were they just people who had overreactive sensory issues who are saying you all need to live this way because then my life will be better. So be like I want you to be. So it's kind of is it them just being judgment, or is it just because it's a nice neutral tone pad?
I don't think they realise that it is absolutely driven from their nervous systems, for sure. They just don't realise that that is what it is, and that other people have different nervous systems. So they need to create their homes according to what is right for them. But yeah, and that's the thing when you don't understand sensory processing, you kind of think, oh, everybody copes much better when it's decluttered and when it's this, that. And it's just like, no.
We're all different. Yeah, well, I'm not going to whether Tupperware was a good thing or not. I mean, is that like sensory driven? And we need Tupperware. I don't know. Organizing things. That's another conversation. Okay, so we're talking about muscles. I always thought that an eyeball was a sphere like a football, but small and squishy. But you're saying muscles, so I'm presuming it can't be like that because it would just slip around and slide. So how do the muscles like I can look at the top of the right of the screen, bottom left of the screen, back to the middle. I can understand those muscles doing that, but it's not a ball, is it? It can't be.
It has little attachments. So if you have the kind of ball shape, for want of a better word, you literally have these little attachments on the sides and on the top and the yeah. So you've got muscles that angle one way or the other and from the bottom. So you've got two on the top that cross over, and you've got one on the side of each side that goes straight in. So it's a remarkable. I'm sure there's a machine. I suppose it's like some of the ropes or some of the old fashioned, when you used to pull the wheels of an old go-kart kind of
Mhm.
thing. It's that kind of thing that, yeah, attaches onto the very sides that we can't see, that's hidden underneath the eyelids, and in the sockets themselves that just, yeah, that hide those muscles that pull the wheels of the go-kart so that it goes exactly where you want it to go. Of course, a go-kart doesn't really go up and down. I don't know, but the eyes do.
Yeah. Suspension. Um, right. So that's the basic mechanics of how the eye physically moves. So when we're talking about the visual process, we talked about the audio processing that sound travels into the ear through the body as well. Your brain then through muscles and bones and gel stuff then interprets that into what we hear as a sound. Like a car horn, we know that's a car horn. So you're basically saying it's sort of it's very similar in a sense that we recognize something as a table, and therefore anything else that looks table like, we can then say, well, that's also a table, even though it's not identical. It hasn't got four legs, this one's got six legs, or this one is round, this one's rectangular. But because of the basic point of it's about the right height, it's about the right shape, it's basically flat, that's a table. So where does it go wrong and how do you fix it?
The processing of vision, a lot of it starts with a tactile system because we see a table and we can see that it is normally firm and hard, as well as the fact that we can see that those legs there are 4 or 6, whatever, sometime in the past, we will have actually gone over and experienced it physically. We will have touched with our tactile sense and with our proprioceptive sense all of those feelings. And that is why babies put things in their mouths, because they are using the tactile sense first and foremost to be able to support the visual sense, to make sense of, to understand what it is that the baby is experiencing. So whether it be their body parts and their skin, for them to know whereabouts they are, whether it be, well, anything, they will stick absolutely anything in their mouths, so that the tactile receptors on the tongue, on the inside of the mouth, as well as how they've grasped it with their own hand, the information about how soft, how squishy, how whatever it is, makes sense to the visual system. And that information, those networks of information get made stronger and stronger. It's like a spider's web of information. The more it gets from how the physical touch from a tactile perspective, the proprioceptive sense in the muscles and the joints around, if a baby bites on something, it's just like, oh, that's quite hard. Whereas if it was a marshmallow that it saw, it would just like, it can put that into the brain processing that actually that's quite soft. It was quite squishy. Whereas if you look at a marshmallow and you've never experienced a marshmallow, you'd think it might be quite hard, it might be quite plastic, it might be quite whatever. But no, if you actually touch it, you realize it's squishy. So it's much easier to categorize like a cylinder. I don't know if what I'm thinking of it when I think of marshmallows, I think of a cylinder. Some people have those little kind of like cup shaped thingies, but so anything else that was cylindrical, you could potentially categorize as a marshmallow, but no, you've touched it. So you realize that that is soft and squishy. So that goes into the category soft, squishy, cylindrical, or cup shape. That's a marshmallow. So we often need to check, well, I check when we're dealing with visual processing, what's going on with the tactile system, and have a look at how they're perceiving. We'll come on to tactile, obviously, as one of our other senses. But also you can train visual perception using your thinking brain as well. So it's nice to work from both sides. So we work and we give people practice about finding things with a bit less clutter. Say, for example, the sock in the drawer. It would be a question of, can you find it when you've only got 3 other socks in there? And then you build it up to 4, and then you build it up to 5. So you have that kind of processing, but you're also then working on the other aspects of their tactile body, other processing, just getting the brain generally connecting, all those neurons in the brain connecting better together.
And then it's just increasing that load. So I presume, therefore, if you're somebody who says, right, a minimalistic home is the only way to live, anything other than that is wrong because I can't cope, then actually what you could do is slowly bring clutter, so to speak, into that house. And over time, actually, you're going to help that person. So here's a top tip. If you've got a friend who's a minimalistic and they're a good friend, bring bits and pieces into the house and leave them. Perhaps you could be helping them. Maybe not, but
A conversation worth having. Yeah.
right. So it seems then, aside from the fact this is, it seems insanely complicated. Wow, what an amazing design this is, by God, that we can, not just that we can hear through the gel and the bones and the hairs and all that, but actually, I mean, you're talking about the cones and stuff, which is why we can see certain things, the colors and whatever. Um, but it's interesting when you think of dyslexia, because I used to think, well, dyslexia is a problem with the eye. They can't see right. Because I can see A, B, C, D, E. How can you not see that? Well, of course, they can see A, B, C, D, E, but their brain is then taking that information and rather than it just flipping it, inverting it, yes, A, B, C, D, E, now it's seeing something different. So it's actually not a sight problem. It's a processing problem, which is what we were talking about last time with the auditory processing issue, and makeup of the ear.
Yeah, and the same way that you can have 20/20 vision, you can have what's it 20/20 on an audiogram? Oh, I can't remember that one. I used to know it, but you can have like a great audiogram, and you can have a great visual screening, and your eyes are looking on the outside, technically, absolutely great, but you've got these visual processing things, and that's the brain processing side of it, not the actual mechanics of the senses themselves.
Which is why we need people like you who can say, yes, your eyes are working, I never say right, optician, ophthalmologist. So that's one element. Can you physically see? But if you can physically see, like I know somebody who's dyslexic can see what I can see, and they can see exactly the same. The only difference is it's what their brain then does with the information in front of them. Whereas I would see the letters, they would still see the letters, but my brain interprets it as it's supposed to be, and theirs messes it up, which is why there are all sorts of tricks and tips for people who are dyslexic on how to write. Like, for example, red is a really bad font color because it's really hard to see on certain colors. So if you go on visual friendly websites, you'll see particular colors and stuff because well, basically they're tailoring their website appearance to people who've got sight issues. So you would expect it to be a bit better, whereas not just black and white or white on black, which should be good for some but not for others. So it's all about working with people, and I guess you've got some similar tricks and tips to help people, as well as developing the muscles, which is the physical element of the part of your job.
Mm-hmm.
I do enjoy these. I like the fact that I thought there were 5 senses, then I discovered there were more, and that's what is interesting. But yes, I'm now stuck on minimalistic people. You're over processing. That's your issue.
It's never that simple, but it's
No.
quite fun to think of it. Yeah.
But again, I'm putting them in a box. Right, you're minimalistic, therefore you've got visual sensory over processing issues.
But I would love to go around and screen these people. You know, sometimes if they ever have a TV program, hey, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? I would actually go around and interview these people and talk to them. And there are so many. The same way I love my rugby players. I love interviewing rugby players as to what their sensory systems are like. But we'll come on to that for another sense. But just going around and talking to people, because I think people are fascinating. Absolutely. Yeah, really interesting. And yeah, how and why they choose to do the things that they do, and especially exploring and raising the awareness of sensory health in that. That would be amazing. If there's a television producer out there who's curious on keen to make a program, then I'm right with you. I'm the gal for the job.
Cool. Right. If you want to know more about Anne Laure Jackson, you can go to our website, pure247radio.org/ALJ, pure247radio.org/ALJ, and that will lead you to Anne Laure Jackson and find out more about her and connect with her as well. Thank you. We've done hearing, we've done sight, we've got 3 more.
What do people want to do
and then
next
more?
week?
Yeah, well, you can let us know if you want us to go a particular direction. We like to just have this ad hoc at the time. But if not, we'll just choose another one of the 3 senses and go from there. Thank you, Anne. Again, I love how the intricacies of the body all work when they're born. It's not perfectly, but they're all designed to work together so well. And it just reminds me what an amazing God we have that creates us in such a way that I can write a letter E, somebody else can see that and learn that that's an E and interpret that. And if you've got enough of those, you've got THE, now you've got the word the. I just love how that can function across communication, whether it's, audio or whatever sort of communication. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Right. Thank you. And we'll see you again next week for more.
It's great. See you then. Bye.
Rated 5 stars by Sorted Magazine's film critic, Pure 247 takes you behind the scenes of the birth of a global Christian radio station. Andy B will have you laughing and crying as you discover what it takes to create ministry that matters in this inspiring tale of perseverance, honesty, and vulnerability. Buckle up and get ready for a story that's uplifting as it is entertaining. Behind the microphone, they face bankruptcy, eviction, and 2 life-changing surgeries. Can they make it? Will they make it? Get your copy of this life-changing book today. Pure 247 is available now on Amazon. Andy B is best described as a man after God's own heart, who insists that God's vision and resourcing trump all handicaps.